When it comes to speedrunning, there are plenty of games where runners will do things that seem to make no sense whatsoever, but actually save time. Paper Mario is no exception. One of the most popular categories for the game is all cards, where the goal is to touch each of the 7-star spirit cards at the end of every chapter of the game, and then defeat Bowser. It's basically the all chapters category. To do that fast, runners do some pretty strange things. Why do they beat the chapters out of order? Why do they downgrade their hammer in Dry Dry Ruins? Well, that's what I'm going to be explaining to you today. Before we get into the chapters themselves, first we need to talk about how Paper Mario stores your progress. There are two main concepts you need to understand: story triggers and flags. In the game's memory, there's one specific value that stores where you are in the story. You can think of it like jumping forward in the game's preset timeline. As you progress normally, this value will increment with certain preset triggers, which are basically just things you do in the game to advance the story. Now, the general rule of thumb is that for things that are required to happen in a specific order in a normal playthrough, the game will check this value to see how those things should behave. For a really good example of this, take the lava puzzle in the volcano. Both completing the puzzle and grabbing the Ultra Hammer in the next room are story triggers that update your progress in the game. However, you can jump around some collision, which lets you skip the puzzle and grab the Ultra Hammer without ever hitting the lava puzzle completed trigger. But because the Ultra Hammer trigger was hit, and it's after the puzzle trigger, the game simply assumes you must have solved the puzzle, so it completes it for you, letting you use Parry to cross the gap back. Importantly, in addition to skipping things, some story triggers can also be used to revert your story to a previous state if you initially skipped over them. Going back to the timeline analogy, it's honestly not a bad description to describe it as time travel. Now, not everything you do in the game has to be done in a specific order. This is where flags come in. Flags are simple values that track whether or not you've done specific things in the game, and they're completely separate from story progress. For example, in Dry Dry Ruins, you're required to kill 3 stone chomps to obtain the stones they're guarding, but the order you kill them in doesn't actually matter. Because of this, the game uses flags to track which ones are left, and if you enter the ruins after a sequence break that skips Chapter 2, they'll still be there to attack you. Now that you understand triggers and flags, let's take a look at the 8 chapters in the game. There's Chapter 1, Storming the Koopa Bros Fortress, Chapter 2, The Mystery of Dry Dry Ruins, Chapter 3, The Invincible Tubba Blubba, Chapter 4, Trials in the Toy Box, Chapter 5, Hot Hot Times on Lava Lava Island, Chapter 6, Dark Days in Flower Fields, Chapter 7, A Star Spirit on Ice, and finally, Chapter 8, A Star-Powered Showdown. In a normal playthrough, you'd play through each chapter in that order, no surprises there. But this game has had a number of glitches and tricks found that can let us do things out of order. So let's break things down a little. The first thing to point out is that, as far as we're aware, there is no fast way to re-trigger Chapter 1 after you've passed it. Technically, there is one way to do it with the re-trigger prologue glitch, but that takes a long time to set up and doesn't really have any speedrun benefit, so we pretty much have to do Chapter 1 first. Skipping ahead a bit, there is also no known way to get to Chapter 8, the final chapter, without first beating Chapter 7. This holds true for going from Chapter 6 to 7 as well, so that means the fastest way to complete the last 3 chapters in the game is, unfortunately, to just do them in order. But don't worry, this does not hold true for entering Chapter 6. In fact, there's a very convenient way to get into Flower Fields. Throughout the first 5 chapters of the game, you collect 4 magical seeds. There's one in Toad Town, one on Mount Rugged, one in Forever Forest, and one on Lava Lava Island. Luckily for us, no matter what your story progress is, as long as you have all of the seeds, you can give them to the lovely Mintita plant, and the game will immediately trigger the start of Chapter 6. This is great because it gives us tremendous freedom for the previous chapters. No matter what order we complete them in, we can go straight to Flower Fields when we're done. If you combine this with Blue House Skip, which is a glitch that lets us skip straight from Chapter 1 to Chapter 5, and the warp pipes in the sewers, we can technically complete Chapters 2 through 5 in whatever order we want. At this point though, you may be wondering why we'd want to do the chapters in a different order at all. Why would that even be faster? And that's a fair question. To answer it, let's take an individual look at each of Chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5. We'll work our way backwards, starting with Chapter 5. After performing Blue House Skip and defeating Blooper, we can go through the blue pipe that appears and emerge in the main area of Lava Lava Island. Now, one of the most important things to note about this chapter is that there's a permanent story trigger in the area to the right. As long as our story is set to anything previous to this point, talking to Colorado will immediately set our story progress to Chapter 5, and this can be done as many times as we need, so keep that in mind. Now, the only 2 notable things that we need outside this chapter from here are Sushi and the Ultra Hammer. In addition to being required to beat later chapters, Sushi gets us access to the Chapter 3 pipe. After obtaining her, we can either continue the chapter or we can leave and come back later. The latter option does take a little bit more time, but because of the fact we can just get out of bounds and go straight into the volcano when we come back, it's worth doing if coming back later saves time. Spoiler alert, it does. So that gives us a bit of freedom. The Ultra Hammer is a bit more restricting though. It's located fairly deep into the volcano, so the only really viable thing to do after getting it is to finish the chapter. You'd need a really good reason to warrant backtracking out after getting it, only to come back later. It's just not worth doing. Alright, enough about Chapter 5. Let's move on to Chapter 4, Shy Guy's Toy Box. So how does this work normally? Well, after gaining access by turning invisible with Bow, the general flow is that there are 4 stations and each one requires you to do a bit in order to move past it. For the first one, you need to get the key to a storeroom in one of the Toad Town shops to obtain the toy train that lets you travel around the track. For the second one, you need to get Tasty's frying pan so that she can bake a cake for Gourmet Guy to eat, which opens a path to a switch to fix the train track. The third station is the simplest. All you have to do is hammer some blocks in a certain order and you can move on. And then finally, in the last station, you fight the big lantern ghost, obtain Watt, and defeat General Guy to beat the chapter. If that sounds like a lot to you, speedrunners agree. Luckily for us, there's a faster way. The trick is to enter in a post-Chapter 4 story state. If we enter in, say, a Chapter 5 state, the game simply lets us go straight into the toy box without Bow. The train is already there and the tracks are all fixed. So what's the catch? Well, since we are in a post-Chapter 4 state, the game considers us to have already beaten the chapter, and if we go to the boss room, it's just empty. In order to get around this, story triggers and flags are going to come in handy. As it turns out, even in this state, the chest containing the frying pan in the second station is still there, unopened. And opening the chest is a trigger that reverts our story back to a Chapter 4 state. From here, we could just continue as normal, content that we skipped the beginning of the toy box, but we can do better. Let's take a look at a map of the 4 stations. Normally, we start in the blue station and work our way around counterclockwise to get to the red station. Because we have to unlock each track in order, the game uses our story progress to determine which tracks are fixed. But what about the shortcut from the red station back to blue? Believe it or not, that's our ticket to going fast. You're never actually required to complete the loop to beat the game. You can simply leave in the opposite direction. Because of this, the final track's unlocked state is handled by a flag, completely separate from our story progress. So here's what we do. We enter the toy box in a post-Chapter 4 state with everything completed. We make a full loop around the track to unlock the final section. Then we go to the pink station and grab the frying pan to trigger a Chapter 4 state. Now, this will lock the path to the green station, but as you can see, the path to the red station is still open in the opposite direction. So if we take the train there, we can simply do the red station as normal, fight the bosses, and beat Chapter 4. So as you can see, entering the toy box in a later story state is very much worth doing. Continuing backward through the chapters, we get to Chapter 3, the Invincible Tubba Blubba. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot we can do to speed this one up. The only exception is that we can use Sushi to get access to the blue shortcut pipe. This lets us skip Forever Forest on the way in and the fight with Junior Troopa on the way out, but entering in a later story state doesn't help us like it does for Chapter 4. We can't skip Boo's Mansion because we need the Super Boots for a single panel in Tubba's Mansion, and then we have to work our way through the rest of the chapter pretty much normally, albeit with some small skips along the way. There is one major thing worth noting here though. Chapter 3 contains the Mega Rush badge, which gives us +4 attack when in peril with exactly 1 HP. If we combine this with Power Bounce, which we obtained back in Chapter 1 in the Koopa Bros Fortress, our attack power goes through the roof. Power Bounce lets us jump on the same enemy over and over, and the +4 bonus applies to each jump. Basically, this means we ideally want to complete Chapter 3 as early as possible, because this badge speeds up the boss fights for every other chapter tremendously. Last but not least, we have Chapter 2, The Mystery of Dry Dry Ruins. Normally, to beat this chapter, you first make your way through Mount Rugged, obtaining Parakarry along the way. You then continue onward past Buzzar, through Dry Dry Desert, and into Dry Dry Outpost. From here, you have to buy a dried shroom and dusty hammer to get the shopkeeper to tell you about Malstafa. You then obtain the Pulse Stone, which you can place to make Dry Dry Ruins appear, but not before watching a lengthy cutscene. Then, once inside, you make your way through, solve 2 sand puzzles, defeat 3 Pokemummies for a key, and solve a stair puzzle to obtain the Super Hammer. Getting the Super Hammer gives you access to fight Stone Chomps for 3 stones. One is right next to you, but the second one you have to backtrack for, and the last one you have to solve a third sand puzzle for. After all of this, you can finally place the stones in their pedestals, fight the boss, and touch the Star Spirit card. There's a better way to do this though. From the Toad Town sewers, we can break a block, defeat a blooper, and unlock 3 shortcut pipes. The left one will take us directly to Dry Outpost. However, to even get into this room, the block we have to break is a stone block, which requires the Super or Ultra Hammer to break. Since the Super Hammer itself is in Chapter 2, we'll have to get the Ultra Hammer from the volcano first if we want to take advantage of this. Okay, so back to beating Chapter 2. If we enter this pipe in a post-Chapter 2 state, a ton of things will be in a completed state, just like in Chapter 4. For one thing, we can go straight into the ruins without even worrying about the pull stone or the cutscene it causes. Then, once we're in, both of the sand puzzles are complete, but because the keys and locks are based on flags and the first key is just sticking out of the sands, we can skip the first lock and use its key to unlock the lock in the Pokemummy room, skipping those 3 fights entirely. Also, since we have the Ultra Hammer already, and the 3 stones are also based on flags, we can just get the first stone right away, eliminating the need to backtrack for it. Then, all the way into the ruins, we can abuse the sand being drained again to skip another lock and go straight to the stone. We have the same problem here though that we had with General Guy. We're still in a post-Chapter 2 state. This does mean that the path to the boss is open, but if we go down there, Toot and Koopa will not be there to greet us. We need a way to revert our story progress to before finishing Chapter 2. Luckily for us, there is one quick way. Grabbing the Super Hammer just so happens to be a story trigger, so we can grab it, place the stones we collected, and finish the chapter. But now the obvious question is this: don't we need the Ultra Hammer later to beat the game? Well, believe it or not, there's only one metal block in the entire game that we need to get past outside the volcano, the one blocking access to the Ultra Boots. Again, luckily for us, there's a trick known as Clippy Boots that lets us get by that block, so it's not an issue. The trick is fairly difficult, but when done well, it's actually pretty fast. Certainly faster than doing Chapter 2 the normal way. One final thing to note is that we do still need Parakarry from the beginning of the chapter. The best way to handle this is to simply do the beginning of Chapter 2 right after beating Chapter 1, and then take the train back to Toad Town so we can begin sequence breaking. Okay, that was a lot of information, so let's do a quick recap of the most relevant bits from each chapter. For Chapter 5, we need the Ultra Hammer to get to Chapter 2, and we need Sushi to get to Chapter 3, but we can do those separately for a minor time penalty. For Chapter 4, we want to enter in a post-Chapter 4 state to speed things up. Chapter 3 should be done as soon as possible to take advantage of the Mega Rush badge in all the other chapters. And finally, Chapter 2 should be entered in a post-Chapter 2 state to speed things up, just like Chapter 4. When it's put like this, I think the order actually ends up being pretty clear. After obtaining Parakarry, we want to get to Chapter 3 as soon as possible, so we'll do Blue House skip, enter Chapter 5, obtain Sushi, and then head back out. You can take my word for it, the time saved in Chapter 5 from having Mega Rush and the Super Boots for additional damage completely makes up for having to enter the chapter twice. From there, we can use Sushi to cross the water to the Chapter 3 pipe. Once we're done in there, we can go right back to Chapter 5, make our way straight to the volcano and beat it. This sets us up perfectly for Chapter 4 and Chapter 2. We can simply enter them in completed states in that order and save all the time that provides us. Then, with all of Chapters 1 through 5 completed, we can plant the magical seeds that we were collecting along the way, go straight to Chapter 6, then onward to 7, and finally 8. This makes the final chapter order 1, 3, 5, 4, 2, 6, 7, 8. And there you go. Hopefully that all made sense and brought some clarity to how the all cards routing works. It's definitely not intuitive, but I think it's surprisingly straightforward why we do what we do when everything is laid out. If anything in this video was confusing, please don't be afraid to ask questions in the comments. I left out a ton of smaller details for the sake of making the bigger picture clear, but I'm happy to explain. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm having a ton of fun making these videos, so be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to let me know that you'd like to see more like this, because I definitely have more ideas. And with that, I'll catch you next time.